House will come back to order. House will come back to order. The clerk will ring the bell. Clerk will read the caption to a group of privileged resolutions.
Commending Georgia Tech Senior Associate Athletic Director Jack Thompson for his dedicated service and devotion of 50 years to Georgia Tech athletics. Honoring the life and memory of Reverend Keith Jones. Commending and congratulating the Lee County High School Trojans football team for winning the 2017 GHSA Class 6A State Football Championship. Recognizing October 9, 2018 as Pandas Awareness Day at the State Capitol. Recognizing and commending Mr. W.T. Chip Nelson upon the grand occasion of his retirement. Commending and congratulating Hogan Nathaniel Gowder. Commending V.K. Kumar and his many achievements in the fields of writing, journalism, and marketing. Recognizing and commending Eddie and Elaine Hamilton on the grand occasion of their 50th wedding anniversary. Recognizing Heather Jackson, Morgan County Middle School Teacher of the Year and Morgan County School System Teacher of the Year for 2017. Commending and congratulating Lassa Joyner on the occasion of her retirement. Recognizing February 18 through 24, 2018 is National Future Farmers of America Week at the State Capitol, and February 20th, 2018 as FF Day at the State Capitol. Recognizing and commending the Bleckley County FFA Forestry Team for winning the first place in the 2017 National FFA Forestry Career Development Event. Recognizing Atlanta United for its contributions to the state of Georgia. Recognizing Heather Henderson, Newton College and Career Academy Teacher of the Year and Newton County School System Teacher of the Year finalist for 2017. Recognizing Sharonda Tarplin, Cousins Middle School Teacher of the Year and Newton County School System Teacher of the Year finalist for 2017. Recognizing Joel Singleton, Eastside High School Teacher of the Year and Newton County School System Teacher of the Year 2017. Recognizing February 26, 2018 as Delta Day at the State Capitol and commending Delta Sigma Theta sorority. Congratulating and commending the Clayton County Fire Department. And for other purposes, that completes the reading of the privileged resolutions.
Is there any objection to adopting the privileged resolutions? The chair hears none, and the resolutions are adopted. Chair recognizes Representative Howard for a morning order.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I failed to realize and think about something that's important to me and to any one of you who have a spouse, whether they are in this room or whether they're at home. And I wanted to take a moment to say happy anniversary for 33 years to my wife, who happens to be here this year with me for the first time in the 33 years that we've been married. So thank you and happy birthday. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
We are going on to the rules calendar. We are going on to the rules calendar. The clerk will read the caption to House Bill 671.
House Bill 671 by Representative Donahue, the 30th, and others, to be entitled an act to amend Code Section 40-2-86, the official code of Georgia annotated relating to special license plates, promoting and supporting certain beneficial projects. This bill having referred to the Committee on Motor Vehicles. That committee recommends that this bill do pass.
Chair recognizes Representative Donahue to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the House, I bring before a special license plate tag, the Georgia Beekeepers Association. Most of you received a bag of honey yesterday, and it in there had a little bit of information about how crucial the bees are, the honeybees, to the state of Georgia and agriculture. With this, I appreciate the Speaker and the constituents from up in Blue Ridge that have been loyal to be strong in the honey industry. I want to tell you a little bit about Georgia and honey. We're third in the nation for producing bees. We're 10th in the nation for producing honey. The honeybee is essential to agriculture for when it goes out and you see a pretty garden, you'll see pollination. This is something that we need. We're going to take the money here, funds generated from the plates sold, increase public awareness of the importance of conservation of the honeybees, the beekeepers through education, research, and I would appreciate your consideration in passing this. And here's the beauty of the tag.
Could I see that? That's not a. It looks an awfully lot like a yellow jacket.
No. We did extensive research to make sure that had nothing to do with the yellow jacket.
Might have to send that back to the architect or whoever, the designer. You have some questions.
I figured I would.
You do?
Yes, sir.
Do you yield?
Yes, sir.
Chair recognizes Representative Kelly to your left for a question.
Would the gentleman yield?
Yes, sir.
Now, Representative Donahue, I appreciate your presentation. Isn't it true that there's been a lot of buzz about this bill before us today?
Yes, sir. That's the actual truth.
And will you further yield?
Yes, sir.
Now, through the process, though, because it's such a good bill, isn't it true that it flew out of committee?
It flew out of committee, dropped a little honey on everyone's desk.
And because of its importance, if you'll further yield.
Yes, sir.
It's important that we support this bill because if it doesn't pass, it would have a stinging effect to Georgia.
That is a great assumption because I will release one of my hives within here.
Great deal.
Thank you.
You are collecting many questions. Do you continue to yield?
Sir,
It's up to you.
Under your guidance, as I've heard before, would you think I should answer one and leave? Probably leave now.
It's up to you.
Let's do another one.
You want to call a lifeline and find out what?
I would like the $1 million pyramid. Let's do one more.
All right. How about Representative? I'm just going to take them in order. Representative Brockway, to your right for a question.
This might not be good.
He wants to know where he can get a bunch of those tags.
Yes. Does gentleman yield?
Yes, sir.
To my friend in the well, just on behalf of the Georgia Tech caucus, isn't it true that we think this is a beautiful design of this license plate and will do wonders for the state of Georgia?
Well, the truth be known, sir, after the research, the honeybee is a sweet bee. The yellow jacket is usually a pest. Mr. Speaker, I think I might better yield the well.
That's the best answer you've ever given. Gentleman has yielded the well. Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All those in favor of the passage of House Bill 671 will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machines on the passage. On the passage of House Bill 671, the ayes are 168, the nays are 0. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. What purpose does Representative F. Strachan rise?
Make a motion.
State your motion.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the House temporarily suspend the rules so that a bill can be read for the first time and assigned to committee.
Clerk will read the caption.
Unnumbered House Bill to be entitled an Act to amend Title 48 of the Official Code of Georgia, annotated relating to revenue and taxation so as to define the term Internal Revenue Code and Internal Revenue Code of 1986.
On the gentleman's motion that the rules of this House be temporarily suspended so a bill can be read for the first time and assigned to committee, is there objection? Is there objection? Chair hears none, and it is so ordered, and the bill is assigned to the Ways and Means Committee. Chair recognizes Representative Carson for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In regard to House Bill 217, many people remember this was on the sine die. My motion is to insist and appoint a conference committee.
Clerk will read the caption to House Bill 217.
House Bill 217 by Representative Carson of the 46th, Kelly of the 16th, Knight of the 130th, and others to be entitled an act to amend Article 2, Chapter 7, and Title 48 of the Fiscal Code of Georgia, annotated relating to the imposition rate, computation, and exemptions from state income taxes.
On the gentleman's motion that this House insist on its position and appoint a conference committee on House Bill 217, is there objection? Is there objection? The chair hears none and the House has insisted. The chair appoints as a committee of conference Representative Carson from the 46th, Representative Powell from the 171st, and Representative Earhart from the 36th as a committee of conference. Bodie. House will be in order. The chair recognizes Representative Reeves for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the House agree to the Senate substitute of House Bill 159 as amended by the House.
Clerk will read the caption.
House Bill 159 by Representative Reeves of the 34th, Willard of the 51st, Evans of the 42nd, and others, be titled an act to amend Article 1 of Chapter 8 of Title 19 of the Fiscal Code of Georgia, annotated, relating to the general provisions for adoption, so as to substantially revise the general provisions applicable to adoptions.
The chair recognizes Representative Reeves to explain the Senate substitute to House Bill 159 and the House amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm going to be honest with you all. It's going to take me a few minutes here, so please bear with me. You've all been champions on this, and we're getting close, and I ask for your attention. I believe in the great power that we have to work together. 2.5 years ago, I dove in on an effort to bring drastically needed changes to Georgia adoptions. In the nearly 3 decades that have passed since the last update of Georgia adoption law, Georgia has been left behind by most of the states in the nation. This is shown, and we know that because over this time, Georgians have realized it's more beneficial to go to other states and adopt a child. All types of adoptions, agency adoptions, private adoptions, relative adoptions, international adoptions, and foster care adoptions have been slowed by our antiquated and outdated processes. And the time has come to act. This body has stood behind me in these efforts. It is hard to express how thankful I am for the support that I have received. I've had the chance to say it many times, and it's important to say it now. When I undertook this issue, I made a commitment to craft a piece of legislation that I believed everyone in this chamber could join in on and be proud of. And that commitment is my word, and it's more important to me than anything else. And as you know, I feel I've had the chance to prove what I mean when I give you all my word. I have fought vigorously for the best adoption policy for the state of Georgia. There is no way that I would ever be able to share with you all of the stories about adoption that I have learned over the last 2.5 years. Some of these stories have come from folks in this room. Some have come from folks who work in this building. Some have come from Georgians from deep South Georgia to Atlanta to North Georgia, and some have even come from residents of other states. And what I have learned, and it has changed my life, is that when a family takes part in an adoption, or for someone who has been adopted, there are few subjects as near and dear to those hearts for the rest of their lives as the concept of adoption is. Our people adopt for many reasons. Some of us are unable to have our own children, and adoption is the only option. Some of us just simply decide to expand their family by taking in a child who needs to be adopted. Some of us adopt our relatives and our stepchildren. And perhaps the most special of all are those of us who recognize that there is no greater impact than we can have and we get the opportunity to have on our community than to take a fractured child who has no home, who is relegated to our foster care system, and give that child not just hope and not just a home, but a chance. My life has been enriched by these stories that I have listened to from people all over whose lives are forever changed by taking part in this incredible opportunity to adopt. My life has also been enriched by the stories that I have listened to from peoples whose lives were forever changed because somebody out there adopted them. With these stories, I have heard countless stories about Georgians who had to leave our great state and take part in this opportunity elsewhere because there was too much uncertainty about adoptions in Georgia. House Bill 159 builds a bridge over this great gap and makes Georgia a place where our residents can move forward with confidence in adopting in our state. Over these 2.5 years, this bill and what it does, it's become more to me than the words on the paper. It's more than the words that give us the policy change. This bill has become about a series of personal stories shared with me of families who have been impacted by the way Georgia law currently stands and how future families can and will benefit from the changes that House Bill 159 offers. I want to talk about the bill before you right now. House Bill 159 has undergone some changes since you last saw it. A lot of work has been put into this bill. The Senate has offered several changes to the bill, which we have welcomed. The Senate has worked hard to make this a better bill. Most of the recommendations of the Senate have been welcomed, and the bill is stronger because of our work the work that our friends across the hall have done. As is the case many times, there have been a few disagreements over what is the best policy on some of these issues. We have a few of those agreements with the Senate, disagreements with the Senate now. And you know what? It's okay. That's how this process works. It has been said that I've been uncompromising and refused to work with the Senate and that I believe my bill should pass without input. This is not true. Last year, as the bill worked through the Senate committee, we worked hard to accommodate the concerns that were raised, and the bill changed. This year, we have accepted most of the changes that have been presented, and these changes have made the bill stronger. I thank the Senate for that, and I thank the Lieutenant Governor. I thank Chairman Jesse Stone. I thank Senator Blake Tillery, and I also thank Irene Munn for their hard and productive work. But we still have a few disagreements, and I want to talk to you about those issues. Right now, I'm not just talking to you, but I also hope to appeal to our friends across the hall, and I beg them to hear me right now with an open mind. There are three changes that I want to talk about. The first of which is what we refer to as House Bill 359. The second is this concept of the 10-day revocation period. And the third is what we call living expenses. So in that order, first I want to talk about House Bill 359. This is the Power of Attorney Transfer of Custody Act. This body passed this bill last year. The Senate passed it, and it was ultimately vetoed by the governor. Governor Deal expressed concerns that the same concerns that some of you in this body share. This bill has been a major Senate priority for quite some time. And when the Senate took up the adoption bill this year, they placed the previous bill that was vetoed on the adoption bill with some slight changes. Obviously, this gave rise to a lot of concern. How is this going to impact the adoption bill? We are here today with a great compromise on this issue, and with authority, I can report to you that the Senate has worked closely and hard with the governor's office to resolve the issues in this concept, and resolution has been reached. And because of that, I am comfortable moving forward with that bill on the adoption bill. The governor's concerns were that the concept, in a nutshell, that the concept found in House Bill 359 from last year had not quite been perfected yet. That there were some scenarios, some unintended consequences that he feared may arise from the bill. I can tell you that everyone is satisfied with the compromise that has taken place. The governor's office is satisfied, as is the Senate. And I believe that we have struck the correct balance on this. The issues have been addressed. The issues regarding the lack of oversight and accountability in the original concept have been addressed fully. The last two issues that I want to focus on are two of the issues in my original bill. So the first is what we call the revocation period. This issue is at the heart of balancing two very important rights and interests in the adoption world, and that's the rights of the birth mother and the rights of the adopting parents. This is a very delicate matter, as both of these are important and sacred. In current Georgia law, a birth mother has 10 days to change her mind after she has signed what is called the surrender of parental rights, and the adoptive parents are able to take the baby home. That document, the signing of that document, is what allows the baby to go home. Under current Georgia law, the mother has 10 days to revoke that surrender. As one can imagine, this is a very difficult matter. For a family who has taken a child home, these 10 days become the 10 days of life, the longest 10 days that they have ever lived. Many of you in this room know people who've been through this, and you know what these 10 days are like. Often there is a reluctance for the adoptive parents to even bond with the child until those 10 days are up. What I'm about to say, and I know this because it's been one of the most recurring conversations that have come up with me throughout the life of this bill. This 10-day period is the biggest reason why Georgians leave our state and go to other states to adopt. For example, Florida and South Carolina have no revocation period, meaning the adoption and the surrender of parental rights is final upon signature. For those who look to adopt, it doesn't take long. If you take an interest in wanting to move forward on an adoption, to hear about some of these really tragic stories where on the 9th and 10th day, that child has been taken away. And so because of that, it's easier for Georgians to go to South Carolina and Florida where that's not a reality. In looking at Georgia's policy, and I want to be clear, and I don't want this to be lost, we took a balanced approach. About 20 states have no revocation period, again, meaning that the adoption's final upon signature. Of the states that do have a revocation period, the majority of those states have what we call a waiver, where a birth mother can sign a document and waive and give up her right to change her mind if she chose to do that. It's an option. We studied the range of the 50 states on this issue. Georgia has one of the most rigorous policies. In fact, only about 5 or 6 states have a stronger policy. We never even considered a movement to eliminate the very important right of a birth mother to change her mind. We sought to give the option of allowing her to waive it if she chose. We felt that the waiver concept was the best option, but we have been unable to come up with a workable and practical way of doing this with the Senate. Their version of the bill inserted a 72-hour waiting period before the birth mother could sign this waiver. This is problematic because in the case of new births, all of the other documents in the adoption can be signed at 24 hours after the birth. The Senate version of this bill and the 72-hour waiting period for signing this is problematic because in most cases, the birth mother would be discharged from the hospital at 72 hours, and thus the adoptive parents would have to go to her home, wherever that may be, bring their lawyer, bring a lawyer for her, and bring a notary public to wherever it is that she lives in order to execute this document, and it just wasn't going to work. So what is in front of you today represents a compromise of that issue. With the inability to agree on a waiver, I have proposed that we forego the waiver and instead reduce the amount of time from the revocation period from 10 days to 4 days. This still preserves the rights of a birth mother, and it also provides more peace of mind for the adopted parents by reducing that waiting time. I'm comfortable with this, and I ask you to be as well. We have moved to the Senate position on this. We have moved closer to their position, and this is how our process works, and I'm comfortable. The last area of the bill that I want to talk about is the area that has possibly been the most contentious, and that is the subject of living expenses. And I ask for your attention as I walk you through this policy. The issue is on whether or not providing in Georgia living expenses can be provided for a birth mother in a non-agency adoptions. And I ask our friends in the Senate to please hear me out. There has been some very toxic rhetoric put out there on this, and it is incumbent upon me right now to address this. What we have attempted to do on this issue has unfortunately been mischaracterized and labeled as baby buying and selling, and even the trafficking of babies and children. This characterization is simply untrue. In fact, earlier this week, the Atlanta Journal-Constitution published a story where their research showed that there's no evidence of these claims. There are two main types of adoptions: agency adoptions and what we call private adoptions. A private adoption is adoption that does not involve an agency. It's important to understand these. Agency adoptions help connect a family who wants to adopt a child to a pregnant woman who has chosen to carry and deliver a baby and chooses to have her baby placed with adoptive persons through an agency. Around 50% of adoptions in Georgia are agency adoptions, and y'all, agencies are wonderful. They help make these connections. And then on the other hand, there's what we call private adoptions or independent adoptions or non-agency adoptions. They don't involve an agency, meaning that the pregnant woman, the birth mother, has found through other avenues a family that she wants to give her child to and have them adopt. There's not a need for an agency. Around 50% of Georgia adoptions occur this way. These private adoptions are often facilitated through personal relationships. A family in your church has a child with an unexpected pregnancy, and they know of another family who is wanting to adopt, and thus that connection is made. There's no need for an agency. You, your family, put out information out in your community that you want to adopt, and all of a sudden a friend of a friend of a friend knows a woman who's chosen to carry and deliver a baby but wants to give that baby up for adoption. That connection is made. There's no need for an agency. Private adoptions are much less expensive than agency adoptions. An agency adoption can cost between $25,000 and $40,000. These become cost prohibitive to most Georgians. So they have to wait, sometimes a long time, for that situation to come up where they can move forward on a private adoption. Private adoptions range from $2,500 to $10,000. Folks, these are both wonderful options. Neither is better than the other, but hear me out on this. In either scenario, whether it's a private adoption or an agency adoption, when it's a newborn adoption, there is a pregnant woman. Most of the women in this room have given birth. You all know things that I will never know. Pregnancy is hard. Your body changes. Your ability to work changes. Your health needs change. The health needs of the baby growing inside of you changes you. There are adjustments that must be made, and sometimes complications occur. I want to share personally. I can speak a little about this. My wife, who most of you know, Amy, through both the pregnancy of my stepson, Charlie, and of our son, Albert, she was forced to leave work during the 3rd trimester of both of these pregnancies. She was on house rest and bed rest. It was for her health and for the health of our boys that she had to get off of her feet. We're blessed that we were able to provide without her working. But not every woman is in a position to do this. When a woman is carrying that baby, to have that baby adopted, y'all, sometimes she needs help. And right now, and it has been for a long time in Georgia, in an agency adoption, that birth mother can receive reasonable living expenses to help her through the pregnancy if she needs them. Nobody in this building is referring to that as baby buying and baby selling. And the reason why is simple, because it's not baby buying and baby selling. But there is a great divide in Georgia law right now as birth mothers are prohibited from these same living expenses in private adoptions, which again are about 50% of adoptions in Georgia. Members, the needs of a birth mother are the same, regardless of whether she chooses to have her baby adopted through an agency or whether she finds a family on her own that she wants to adopt that child. And this is about creating equal access in this option for Georgia birth mothers. This is not baby selling. We have listened to the Senate. We have heard their concerns. We have moved the bill a step in their direction. We have defined living expenses and limited them to rent, utilities, groceries, maternity garments, and maternity accessories. If the mother has to stop working, y'all, the bills don't stop coming. She may need help. This is not baby buying. When she is pregnant, she eats not just for herself, but for that baby. Her diet changes. Her nutritional needs changes. This is not baby buying. Throughout a pregnancy, her body changes. Her clothes don't fit. She needs maternity clothes. She may not be able to afford them. Y'all, this is not baby buying. These are not illegal inducements. This is not somebody getting a new car. This is not an envelope of cash sliding under the table. These are simple living expenses that, per the bill, involve judicial review by a judge that will ultimately rule on that adoption. So I ask you to dismiss this rhetoric. Baby buying, y'all, and baby selling is immoral. It's wrong. It's highly illegal already by both Georgia and federal law. The United States of America is a member of the Hague Convention, an international treaty that establishes adoption practices around the globe. Hague Convention members do not engage in baby buying. Listen to this. Florida, South Carolina, North Carolina, Tennessee, Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, Missouri, Kentucky, Virginia, Washington, D.C., all allow living expenses in these private adoptions. Approximately 40 states across our country do. No one is accusing these states of engaging in baby buying and baby selling, because it's not. What we are attempting to do here, we are not blazing any new territory. There's also been rhetoric that these living expenses will raise the cost of adoption, and I'm almost finished, y'all, but this is totally untrue. As it stands right now, when a birth mother has chosen a private adoption, if she is unable to financially support herself through that pregnancy, she can either get, in a private adoption, she can either get no assistance from the adoptive parents, or they have to find an agency that's willing to get involved and thus convert a private adoption to an agency adoption, which becomes expensive. This is what drives up the cost for adoptive parents. Creating equal access to this option will not drive up the cost of adoption. It will help to ensure that birth mothers and the child they carry are healthy and cared for, and there is no evidence in all the other states which suggest that it raises the cost. We use the slogan, creating a level playing field, all the time in this room. Giving this option to Georgia birth mothers does just that. It creates a level playing field. But we're not talking about the economy. We're talking about simple compensatory ways to help offset the cost of pregnancy for a mother who has chosen to carry and deliver a person into this world and have someone else adopt it. This is reasonable. This is fair. This is common, and this will help care for our birth mothers and help ensure the health of the mothers and the child. In closing, I want to share with you a quick story. Many of you in this room know Eric Harrison and Laura Hawk. They have been advocates at the Capitol on issues for many years. Many of us know them. A few weeks ago, they were married. They have already decided that they intend to adopt. They have followed this bill from its inception carefully. They are passionate about this issue. What we do will impact them just as it will every other Georgian who adopts. Instead of a traditional flower arrangement, the bouquet of flowers that Laura carried down the aisle for her wedding is this right here. This is a paper flower arrangement. And the paper that was used to create these flowers are pages from House Bill 159. They have given this bouquet to thank me for these efforts, and I will treasure this along with my most precious possessions for my life. But while they have thanked me, I want to thank them. And I want to thank every other Georgian who has cared about it, who's followed it, who's encouraged me, and who's advocated for it. And I want to again thank the Senate. And gosh, I want to thank Governor Deal, who has stood behind me every step of the way and supported the efforts of this House. I want to thank every one of you because you have all had a role in this. And most of all, I want to thank the man behind me, Speaker Ralston, for his support on this issue. I know his heart, and he cares deeply about this, and I'm eternally grateful for his support. This General Assembly has the chance to really touch the lives of thousands of Georgians through this legislation. Children, women who have chosen to carry and deliver life, and to the people in our state who will adopt these children. Please join me in voting yes as we take one step closer to getting this done. And to our friends in the Senate, I urge you to pass this today. Mr. Speaker, I will yield for any questions.
Chair recognizes Representative Fleming to your left for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To the gentleman in the well, is it not true that I also want to thank you and the Speaker and all those who have worked tirelessly to bring us this adoption bill, and I join and hope my colleagues will vote in support of your motion. Is that not true?
It is true. Thank you.
Is it also not true that the House Bill 359, the one that was placed onto the adoption bill by the Senate, that I was the primary sponsor in the House of that bill, which was intended to help parents through a process of difficulty to have someone else possibly care for their child for a temporary period of time? Is it not true?
That is true.
Further, is it not true that I appreciate the efforts of the governor's office and the Senate in the improvements that have been made to House Bill 359? And is it not true that I believe that these safeguards added in mainly at the request of the governor's office will improve House Bill 359 and possibly address some of the concerns of those people who had concerns last year when we passed the bill?
That is true, Representative Fleming, and thank you for expressing those comments.
Thank you for your hard work.
Thank you.
Chair recognizes Representative Oliver to your left for a question.
Does the gentleman yield?
I do.
I also want to thank you and Speaker Ralston and the governor for your good work. Isn't it true on the most difficult part of this bill for me, the power of attorney part, that we've added 3 specific protections that bring sunshine to the use of power of attorney? Sunshine, the power of attorney must be filed with the probate court, that faith-based organizations must do listings if they receive power of attorneys, and thirdly, we are newly requiring criminal background checks for non-relative agents appointed under the bill. Isn't that true to add safeguards to the bill?
That is true, Representative Oliver, and I join you in feeling that we have struck the right balance on that issue.
Chair recognizes Representative Peak to your right for a question.
Does the gentleman yield?
I do.
I too want to thank you for working on this bill. This has been of particular interest to me. 30 years ago, a young mother was facing a difficult decision of what to do with her baby. She made the courageous decision to put that baby up for adoption. My wife Betsy and I were fortunate enough to be the recipients of this young baby that was put up for adoption. We lived through the 10-day waiting period with excruciating anxiety of wondering if this little girl, this little baby that was welcomed into our home and we had grown to love as our own, would potentially be leaving our home because the birth mother had changed her mind. We also had to deal with the challenge in the private adoption of how do we help this young mother through those challenging times when she was giving birth. So, is it not true that the 2 changes that you have worked so hard for and that this House has fought for on the waiting period and the living expenses for private adoption will make a significant difference in helping life be saved in future adoptions and the transition made better for adoptive parents and for birth mothers as a result of these changes?
My friend knows very well of what he speaks of.
Thank you very much.
Chair recognizes Representative Holcomb to your left for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does the gentleman yield?
I do.
First, I want to commend you, Representative Reeves and Speaker Ralston and Governor Deal, for your Herculean efforts to get us where we are today. I'm in full support of the adoption bill and recognize that it includes a number of compromises. And on the power of attorney aspect of it, isn't it true that I, along with many others, voted against it when it came through initially, and Governor Deal vetoed it because he was concerned that it would create a parallel and unchecked system that could unintentionally place children at risk. And since that time, massive amounts of work have gone into providing oversight into the bill, and that now this version is one that is acceptable to the governor's office, outside experts, to include the Emory Law, Barton Center of Children and Policy, and that this bill should be something that every member in this House can vote in support of.
Thank you. My friend knows exactly what he speaks of.
Do you further yield?
I'll take one more question, Mr. Speaker.
Chair recognizes the chairman of the House Judiciary Committee, Chairman Willard, to your right for a question.
Thank you. The gentleman yield?
I do.
Two things. One is the fact that the private adoption, so everybody who doesn't handle these is not aware of it, it still has oversight of the court from beginning to end. Background checks, home inspections, everything that was required has to be reported to the court, including the monies that are expended for the birth mother living expenses. Is that not true?
That is correct. The bill specifically requires that in the adoption petition, which is filed with the court, that all of those expenses have to be submitted with an affidavit, and that all goes through the judicial process that the judge considers in deciding whether or not to finalize an adoption.
And could you please direct me to where in the bill is the language about the living expenses? Do you have that noted? And while you're looking that up, if I might relate to you a story from my own background, one of the hardest things I ever had to do was take a child away from the adopted parents and give it back to the biological mother using the revocation, the 10-day revocation. Yeah. A terrible thing.
Thank you for sharing that. And to answer your question, on page 54, lines 1913 through 1924 are the parts of the bill, and specifically lines 1921 through 1924 are the parts of the bill which define what living expenses are. And then if you look down to line 1933, this discusses and references the other part of the code section where the petition requires that all of these expenses be reported and submitted in affidavit form to the court. Mr. Speaker, with that, I will yield the well. Thank you.
Gentleman has yielded the well. Is there any objection to the adoption of the House amendment? The chair hears none, and the House amendment is adopted. On the gentleman's motion that this House agree to the Senate substitute to House Bill 159 as amended by the House, all those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machine. On the gentleman's motion that this House agree to the Senate substitute to House Bill 159 as amended by this House, the ayes are 168. The nays are 0. And this House has agreed to the Senate substitute to House Bill 159 as amended by the House. For what purpose? For what purpose does Representative Reeves rise?
Mr. Speaker, I move that House Bill 159 be immediately transmitted to the Senate.
The gentleman has moved that House Bill 159 be immediately transmitted to the Senate. Is there any objection to the motion? The chair hears none, and it is on its way across the hall. This house will be in recess till 3:30 p.m.